SparrowGirl by Sarah Pennypacker. There is a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. One day, not too long ago, war was declared in China. Sparrows are our enemies. They eat too much grain. We must drive them from the land. Older brother held out the bag of fresh firecrackers that father had given him to help fight the war. I like sparrows, Ming-Li said quietly. Walking home with older brother, she looked up and tried to imagine the sky empty, silent. Mother and father were talking about the plan too. The village barn is empty now. Next year it will be full of grain. I could help you plant more seeds in the spring, father, Ming-Li said, and weed the fields and... You are not a farmer, father patted her head. You are only a small girl. That night, Ming-Li couldn't sleep. Something bothered her, scratching at her thoughts like a monkey. She crept into older brother's sleeping mat. How will the other birds know? She whispered, shaking his shoulder. Older brother rubbed his eyes and scowled in the moonlight. Won't our noise parade frighten the other birds too? What if the nightingales fly away, or the swallows, or pigeon? Younger sister, your brain is as small as a sparrow's, hissed older brother. Our leaders' plans are always perfect. They told us at school. Now go to sleep. The next morning, a tremendous ding woke Min-Li. She ran to the window. A sea of people flooded the village, clanging gongs, crashing cymbals, beating drums, and shouting in their loudest voices. Firecrackers exploded like gunshots. Dress warmly, mother said, handing her a rice cake. You will be gone all day and into the evening. Ming-Ling and her older brother picked up their pots and spoons and went outside. The villagers were running through the streets, making so much noise the ground itself rumbled. They were looking to search for the enemy sparrows, but not down to see if they might trample a small little girl. Ming-Li clutched older brother's hand. He held her away from the thundering crowd and into the orchard. Older brother stopped under a grove of apricot trees and lit a firecracker. Boom! A cloud of sparrows rose and flew across to a row of pear trees. He followed and lit another firecracker beneath them. Ming-Li clapped her hands over her ears and squeezed her eyes shut. The firecrackers' loud golden sparks were exploding inside her head now. She wanted to fly away, like a sparrow, to someplace high and safe. Ming-Li set out for the road, but just as she reached it, she saw something fall from the sky like a stone. A group of villagers saw it too and hurried over. It's been frightened to death, Ming-Li cried. We have to stop. Dead sparrows don't eat grain, crowed an old man beside her. More birds fell to the ground lifeless. Aye, we're winning the sparrow war, cheered the others. Ming-Li ran home. She climbed to the peak of the roof to check on Pigeon, but his cage was empty. Older brother must have sent his pet out yesterday. Suddenly, a plump silver bird flew toward her. You've come home. Ming-Li held out her arm for Pigeon to land on, but he only fluttered in the air for a moment and then fell with a soft thud on the curved clay tiles. Pigeon lay limp and still except for his heart pounding beneath the pearly feathers of his breast, and then even he was still. Tears flooded Ming-Li's eyes. She tucked the bird into her jacket, climbed down from the roof, and set out for the orchards. Older brother was standing beneath a walnut tree, preparing to set off a firecracker. Ming-Li touched his elbow. Wait! Older brother's face crumpled and his shoulders fell. He dropped his firecracker. Together they buried Pigeon under the walnut tree. The noise parade will kill all the sparrows in China, maybe all the birds. We have to do something, Ming-Li said. Will you help me? Older brother nodded, his eyes red. But no one can disobey our leader. What can we do? Maybe some of the sparrows that fall to the ground are still alive, like Pigeon was. We could rescue them. All that afternoon, whenever she saw a bird fall, Ming-Li hurried to the spot. Time after time, she was too late. But then, just as the lanterns were being lit, a small brown bird dropped beneath a quince bush. then fluttered up for a moment. Ming Li's hope rose with it. She ran to the bush and found a sparrow struggling to its feet. She scooped up the exhausted bird into her jacket. "You're safe now, little friend," she whispered. Around here, people were walking home, congratulating one another. If 2 more days, then there won't be a single sparrow left in all of China. Mingling wrapped her jacket more closely around her. She could feel the bird's tiny heart beating against her own. "Yes, there will," she promised. She found older brother in the crowd. "Just one," she told him, letting him peek inside. Together they brought the little sparrow to Pigeon's empty cage. Ming Li filled the water cup and broke her rice cake into bits. The next morning, she and older brother hurried out to search for birds to save. If any villagers were nearby, Ming Li ran to the fallen sparrow. Older brother distracted them. "Look, to the west, a flock of enemies." By afternoon, the birds were falling from the sky at a terrible rate. "They're like raindrops," said older brother. "The sky is raining birds." "No, Ming Li. They're like teardrops. The sky is crying birds." By nightfall, they had rescued 4 more sparrows. On the 3rd day, the sky was nearly empty. Still the villagers poured through the streets, clanging gongs, clashing cymbals, beating drums, and shouting into the loudest voices. Ming Li and older brother found only 2 more birds alive. 7 sparrows, said Ming Li later in the cage of the rooftop, when there used to be thousands. 7 sparrows, said older brother, when there could have been none. That night, Ming Li lay awake. Her sparrows would need room to fly soon, but if she let them loose, the villagers would hunt them. The next morning she arose before dawn. She hurried to the rooftop, climbed down with the cage, and ran it through the fields of the village barn. She released the birds inside. "Someday you'll fly under the sun again," she promised them. Each day after school, Ming Li visited her sparrows. She watched them fly between the rafters, then swoop down to peck at worms and bugs. But when spring came, Ming Li worried. As soon as the first crop was harvested, the farmers would open the barn. Where could she hide her sparrows then? Already, father and older brother had begun planting. Ming Li ached to go with them. "Let me help you," she begged each day. "You are not a farmer," her father smiled. "You are only a small girl." One day in midsummer, Ming Li noticed her father looked worried when he came back from the fields. "There's to be a meeting of all the farmers tomorrow," he said, "in front of the village barn." "The village barn? What if they went inside?" The next morning, Ming Li followed her father. She hid beside the barn. The farmers sat in a circle, their faces serious. "I will have no grain this year," said one. "The locusts are eating it all." "The plums in my orchard are full of worms," cried another. "Weevils are eating my rice," added a third, "and grasshoppers are chewing through the beanstalks." "There will be famine," said Ming Li's father. "Our families will starve." And then there was silence while the truth settled over them, cold and dark as a winter night. Ming Li couldn't help herself. She ran out from beside the barn. "It's because there are no sparrows. There are no sparrows to eat the insects now." "Ming Li, go home," cried her father, but the eldest farmer held up his hand. "She is right," he said. "The sparrows were never our enemies." "What does it matter?" asked the second farmer. "What's done is done." Ming Li whispered something in her father's ear. He stood, and she said, "Show us." Ming Li led the farmers to the barn and threw open the doors. She held her breath. How great would her punishment be? Inside, the sparrows rose from the rafters and flew out into the fresh summer air. The farmers gasped in wonder. "Your daughter brings us a miracle," they cried. "She brings us 7 miracles. From this day, sparrows will live safe in our village, and we will tell everyone we meet from the other village about the wisdom of our sparrow girl." "Yes," agreed Ming Li's father. "My daughter is the sparrow girl, but she is something more." He lifted her to his shoulders. "Ming Li is a true farmer."